Did you know that we take on average 22,000 breaths every single day? So here's something to think about. Is your breath actually helping regulate your nervous system, or is it keeping you stuck in stress? Welcome to the WTF podcast, friends. My name is Molly Smith, and I'm on a mission to equip a million people with the tools to recognize when they're in the funk, but more importantly, how to pivot out of it. By tuning in today, you've joined me on this mission, and I'm so glad you are here. We are continuing our expert series where we're diving deeper into the tools and strategies that actually help people pivot out of the funk. And today, we're talking about something that you're already doing all day long: breathing. Specifically, how your breath can become one of the most powerful tools to regulate your nervous system and help you shift when you're overwhelmed or stressed out. So, to help us unpack this, I'm joined by Eileen McDonald. She's the creator of the BodyCue IQ system and holds a master's degree in applied breathing sciences. Her work sits at the intersection of stress, physiology, and behavior and helps people understand how their breathing patterns, nervous system, and lived experiences are all connected. When you realize that your breath is connected to all of these things, it stops being something that's just happening in the background and becomes a tool that you can use to help you pivot out of the funk. And that piece right there is what got me so excited about this conversation. So please join me in welcoming Eileen McDonald to the WTF podcast. Hi, friend.
Hey, Molly, how are you?
Good, good. I'm so excited to have this conversation and dive in. I think a lot of the people who probably listen to the show are familiar with breath work and all of that. And I'm a huge fan of breath work. But what we're actually going to dive into today isn't necessarily like the Wim Hof breathing and all of the things, but actually just the breathing patterns that we have that we rely on every day in our lives. So I want to level set for the audience. Can you give us a 30,000-foot view of how you think about the breath?
Absolutely. It's interesting. Yes, there's so many breathing techniques out there. It's overwhelming over the last probably 5 or 10 years. You just get bombarded. And so I've actually started learning about breath when I was working with executives on stress management. I used biofeedback devices that actually was able to detect in their bodies where stress lies. And so one of the devices that I wound up having was what they call a capnometer. And so it measures the breathing chemistry. So it really got me really excited about that. I'm the science nerd, so I like to have science and magic come together.
Sure.
And so when we talk about breath, many times we talk about breathing as a tool to calm down, to refocus, to reset, and all of that, which is true. And I don't think people realize that our breathing can actually cause our body to go into stress response. The breathing is actually the one that, if we're not paying attention and we don't really know our breathing patterns, because think of it this way, we've talked about this before, you and I, breathing can be a coping skill. So if things are too, this is how I look at it, if things are too challenging outside, why would you want to inhale them in? So we hesitate and we hold. It's almost like when you get bad news, you hold that.
Yes.
And the exhale is letting go. So I look at breath at the mechanics, just like many other people do, whether we're breathing to our diaphragm, we're using the right muscles, or we have the right posture. But I also look at breathing at the chemistry level as we inhale oxygen, we exhale carbon dioxide. And we'll talk about that a little bit, but the carbon dioxide is really the key to actually healthy breathing. And I don't think people really understand that, or it gets too overwhelming. I don't need to know about the science. But I think it's important for us to really understand that, because the mechanics is one level, and then we have the breathing chemistry. And then the third level is actually breathing as a behavior. And it's actually enmeshed with our emotions. So if we think about it, our breathing that's where the coping skill comes in, right?
Sure.
We start to breathe a certain way. I would say if life is too hectic outside, we start to have a tendency to hold our breath. And what is a really big one is, how hectic is our lives? We're connected 24/7. So our breath tries to keep up with the pace of our life.
Yeah.
And it can only do that so long until that it starts to show up in other areas. And it shows up in our health, in our mental status, in our physiology, all over the place, whether it's for stomach issues, whatever. So I look at it at 3 levels. That's how I approach the breath.
Okay, wow. Okay, so let's dive into the BodyCue IQ system that you have created. And spoiler alert, I actually have been tracking my breath at various times of the day over the last couple of weeks in preparation for this episode and have learned some very interesting things. Tell us about BodyCue IQ, and then let's walk through analyzing what I found.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
So BodyCue IQ, I created that framework after years of really getting into biofeedback, understanding physiology. I was trained in neuroscience, so I did brain mapping. So really understanding the body, mind, body, spirit, brain, and body. And so I really think that for me, one of the foundation is breathing because, like I said, it can be used as a coping skill and it can also help us, but we have to understand why we're using it, when we're using it, how we're using it. I said many times people will say, take that proverbial deep breath. And
Yes.
when people take a deep breath, what do? They inhale through their mouth, they take this gulp of air, and then they
Yes.
exhale.
Yes.
And that dysregulates our breathing more. It's not helpful. Everybody thinks it can be helpful. I've been at conferences, everybody stand and take a deep breath. I've actually had I was at presenting and during my presentation, there was a yoga coach, a yoga instructor, and she's a coach. And I did a simple breathing technique that is very familiar for people, and she actually had a panic attack. So breathing isn't as simple as we think because there's so much embedded in it, like I said. So for me, what body QIQ to me is really understanding the breath. Then we go into the nervous system regulation. So I do brain breath, and then I go into the being. We really get into understanding who we are, how we operate, really understanding our core values. So it's a framework that I use. I always start with breath because breath gives us so much information. It gives us a foundation. So tell me what you found.
Okay, I will say, so I'm a very shallow breather. If I'm not thinking about it, if I'm not intentionally in meditation doing breathing or what have you, where somebody's like guiding me to breathe, which I love, by the way. Like when I'm sitting at my desk or reading a book or whatever, I'm a very shallow breather. So I don't take very deep breaths. I don't breathe out of my diaphragm. It comes out of my chest. And my breaths are short, very short.
So when you say shallow, so you feel like you're not engaging your diaphragm, correct?
Oh,
Is that what you're
no,
staying in the chest? Okay,
100%.
area. And so do you notice certain situations that are more prominent than others? So you said reading a book, but what other tasks that you do that you notice?
Where my breath is shallow, sitting at my desk when I'm working, not necessarily like when I'm in a meeting with somebody, but when I'm sitting at my desk and I'm actually getting work done, very shallow. Also very shallow when I wake up as well. And I have sleep apnea and need to more regularly sleep with my CPAP.
Yeah.
But when I'm not sleeping with my CPAP, my breath is very shallow. No question. When I
Yeah,
wake
and
up, when I wake
when you
up.
wake up, yeah. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's really great that you've identified that. Now I'm going to go a little bit deeper. When did you notice anything different between the inhale and the exhale? Was the inhale shorter a little bit, or what did you feel like the exhale was a challenge to get out? Did you notice any?
No, I didn't notice, like, the exhale just happened.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's just the inhale. So
yeah.
many times it can be as simple as our posture. Believe it or not, I have people do an exercise where they just take 4 breaths, they close over their arm like they're on their computer or they're on
Mhm.
their cell phone, tablet, and take 4 breaths. So it's curve your shoulders
Yep.
and curve your shoulders in like you're on the computer and take 4 breaths and notice as you inhale, does it get stuck in your chest? That breath, that air when it comes in through your nose?
Yeah.
And now open up and notice the difference. Roll your shoulders back and notice, take that
Oh,
beautiful breath
yeah.
in.
Oh, yeah. So much more expansive.
So part of
Yeah.
yours could be posture. You don't realize because that becomes automatic.
Yeah.
Other part of it too is that's why it's always an inquiry. I always say you're your own detective because it changes with, believe it or not, with different tasks and different, I would say,
Yeah.
people around us. So many times people get that short, shallow breathing when they're angry. They get a little
Yes.
panting, or
Yes.
or this slower, shallow breath when life just seems a little heavy.
Yeah.
And we don't realize that our bodies are giving us so much signals. That shallow breathing is giving you information for something. And so the inquiry would be, what is it at the time? Are
Yeah.
you emailing somebody? Is the workload that you're doing, is it overwhelming? Are you hyper focusing? And do you need to take more frequent breaks to really open up that body?
Yes. Okay. Shallow breaths out of the chest are probably not the best.
They're not the ideal because the reason why, think of it this way, I'm going to go into a little science if you allow
Please.
me. So when
Please.
we inhale, of course, we inhale oxygen, right? And the
Yes.
chemistry I talked about before, we exhale carbon dioxide.
Correct.
Carbon dioxide is the key really for breathing because our bodies always usually, unless you have an issue, most people have enough breathing. I've worked with pulse oximeters and people
Sure.
doing breathing. What happens is when we breathe through our chest, the short, shallow, we have to breathe more often. That short, shallow breathing is meant to be a short term response to stress. So we have a stress response. And I use this as an example. Think of a gazelle. She's out in the savannah and a tiger chases her quickly, right? She's gazing, she's just at peace. And in a second, our nervous system has to go on. She does.
Yes.
And right, the blood flows through her body. She breathes
Yep.
faster. She does that short, shallow breathing. But after that is over, and I would say in my story, she always gets away. The tiger goes 20 seconds and he can't. But what happens is she shakes her body to bring down the stress hormones. And
Mm.
so her breathing gets easier, her heart rate gets slower, the blood goes back to where it's supposed to be. In our world, we don't turn on and off that stress response like that. We as humans, as smart as we are, or we think we are, we stay in that humming of a
Yes.
stress response. So that
Yes.
humming of a stress response keeps that short, shallow breathing because your body is still on alert. So that nervous system is not as regulated. That could be the reason why the short, shallow breathing is continuous.
Yeah. Okay. So that's fascinating. So it's like a stress response that we stay in
We
because
get stuck in.
I'm telling you, I got in my head about it when I
So
realized, okay, really shallow, the exhale kind of happens, and then it's like I don't breathe for a little bit. And I also hold my breath. We'll have to talk about that.
yes.
But I got in my head about it. I'm like, oh my God, I know this isn't right. Like, I know that there's a better way to do this. Okay. All right.
So number
So,
one, don't
yeah.
judge. I always say, please don't judge because you've learned a breathing habit for a reason, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's so when we start to judge it, that's when we have a challenge in changing it.
Yes. Oh,
Once we
yeah.
look at it with curiosity, one of your words, I would imagine, is curiosity, right?
Mhm.
And being curious of why is this happening?
Yeah.
You've been doing just fine. You're successful. You have been doing fine. And let's see how we can boost some of that performance, right? How can we lower that? I would
Yes.
say lower the dial on stress, lower the dial on that stress response, anxiety, overwhelm. And many times people look at holding their breath as something that is wrong. But actually, what your body's actually doing is really smart. When we breathe short and shallow, our carbon dioxide level gets too low. We hold our breath to raise that carbon dioxide level. And then
Oh,
so holding our breath is not necessarily a bad thing. We need to understand that we were breathing short and shallow before. It's our body's mechanism to do that. And then we
oh,
go on. So when I ask people if they're breath holders, it's not that it's good or bad. It's that what's happening prior to that holding of the breath.
oh,
Let's go a little bit deeper to figure out what is going on. Why am I holding my breath? It's a learned behavior for many people. Some
right.
people that have anxiety or depression do it for different reasons, but it really is your journey. Your breathing patterns are yours. It's not a one size fits all. And that's why I'm, I thought that I don't, I promote that really we find out our breathing patterns. If we're going to use anything to calm us down or to give us more energy, we need to know what our baseline is because once we
Yes.
do that, then believe it or not, you don't need to do those exercises as much
Oh,
because
interesting.
but it's practice. We have to do
Okay.
practice every day, just like
Yeah.
going to the gym. It's not anything. The other
Yeah.
thing is, do you know people that sigh a lot? Are you a sigher?
I'm not a sire, but I know people who do.
And so when people sigh in front of you, what's your response?
I immediately think they're like annoyed.
Yes. They're bored. They're bored, annoyed. I've been
Yeah.
in situations where that has been an issue, where there's
Yeah.
actually we're at a meeting and all of a sudden somebody's sighing, somebody starts to get agitated, oh my goodness, the frustration gets really elevated. And the words
Right.
that come out are not very nice. So,
Physiologically, what's happening with the sigh?
physiologically, your body's resetting itself just when it's holding
Oh.
the breath. So there's a
Huh.
physiologic so for people who sigh a lot, I bet they've learned some dysfunctional breathing habits that actually their body like I said, we look at our body sometimes as the body's not working for us, that it's working
Mhm.
against us. But if we
Sure.
really get to know the body's working for us. That stress response is there to keep us safe. Our
Sure.
brain senses that. Now, just like anything else, if you use the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn defense mechanism over and over again, that becomes part of your daily habit. And some
Absolutely.
people, their personality, so to speak. But if we really look at why the body has started that, the body's doing it as a defense mechanism, and we need to
Yes.
start to look at that with a little deeper curiosity. And
Yeah.
yes, sighing, when I was training in breathing, I have a breathing device, and I had two people hooked up, a husband and wife, and they were friends of mine. I was doing my training, and so they had an issue that kept coming up for them, and they would get really hot and activated. And so then, when you do, many people say things that they regret,
Right.
and or they can't think of what to say until the event is over.
After.
It's one or the other, right? So they would have this discussion. And when I watched their numbers go, I say below the line, when their cardiac oxygen level got too low and their muscle tension got too intense, then they would start to reactivate. I'm like, okay, you can't answer the person until we get the breath stabilized up to. And so it was really interesting to see what would happen because one person was a sigher all the time. And the other person got to realize that they were sighing because they got to see on a screen that actually there is a physiological shift in that. Does that make sense?
That is so cool. Yes,
I
it makes
said,
sense.
yes. So I said, really, we should do this, save a lot of marriages probably and really,
Yeah,
because it's a benefit.
absolutely. Okay, so the space between breaths is that's okay?
Yes.
That's
So,
okay to have?
so there's a natural pause between our breath.
Yes,
It's
okay.
very slight. It's very
Yep.
slight. So when people learn the 4-7-8 breath, which is a
Yeah.
great breath for when you want to regulate your nervous system, a lot of people struggle with that holding for 7. So I tell people what they need to do is practice 2-1-4. Inhale for 2, hold for 1, exhale for 4. And then you go up to 3, 5, and 6 because that's the breathing technique that actually caused that person to go into a panic attack, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
And she knew about health, she knew about yoga breathing, but for some reason at that day, that was a trigger for her
Oh
because
my
it
goodness.
puts our brain, it can put our brain into that state, activates the nervous system. I have people try the 4-7-8 if it's uncomfortable, just shorten it up a little and
Yeah.
get comfortable with that. But there's a natural pause. It's not very long. So so just inhale, just naturally just inhale and just notice if there's a pause and exhale. There's usually a pause in between. That
Yeah.
I always say the inhale is, what we're taking in the world. The exhale is letting go. And that pause is giving us that space. And so that's why when people expand that space, that the holding of the breath, that helps the nervous system reset itself.
You said
But if we have a natural one on our own. And that's what people miss. They go from inhale to exhale to inhale to exhale. And
yeah,
there's not a little bit of a pause. So there's a
yeah,
lot of learning of their behavior and emotions that come up
yeah,
when people are not inhaling naturally and they're not exhaling naturally.
naturally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Is there
Did that
anything
answer your
spec
question?
It
Okay.
does,
Okay.
absolutely. Now, is there anything specific with the exhale that we need to be focusing on?
So the exhale is supposed to be effortless.
Okay.
So if you have to push that exhale out or you feel that you have more air in and just can't get it out and you have to do a double exhale, that's usually telling someone they're holding on to something. There's something
Oh,
that they're not releasing, so to speak. And
okay.
so what is that all about? So that's where the behavioral and the comes in, that emotional aspect of it. But yeah, so notice when we inhale, our inhale, we use our muscles, our diaphragm is
Mhm.
supposed to be used and the lateral sides of our muscles right here. And our rib cage expands. So put your hands on your side and take an inhale in and notice if your rib cages expand out.
Yeah.
The problem with belly breathing is people focus on pushing their belly out. not
Gotta get
utilizing their diaphragm. I utilize the
mm,
diaphragm. I say, think of it as a 360 view. We need the diaphragm to expand in all aspects. But
right.
people, because their lifestyle is so hectic, they stay. Even if they access their diaphragm when they're practicing, our diaphragm needs to be used all of the time, not just when we're practicing breathing. We need to be engaging the diaphragm for every single natural breath.
Yeah.
Our diaphragm is a huge muscle. So think about when we get tension from stress, what do our muscles do? Like
Clench.
our
Yep.
diaphragm clenches.
Yeah.
Think about that. So really it's waking up that diaphragm. Our diaphragm massages our digestive system.
Huh.
So
Mm,
if we're not using the diaphragm, a lot of times you'll hear people say, "Oh, I have indigestion or I have stomach issues or I can't tolerate this." That's really important to know. And believe it or not, our diaphragm is connected to our pelvic floor and our shoulders. So if we're not utilizing our diaphragm, it can actually affect the connection to our pelvic floor. So we work as a system. And so
yeah.
it's really important that when we have natural breathing, which is inhaling naturally, using the right muscle, not our neck muscles, not our shoulders muscles.
Right.
Most people at the end of the day are exhausted. Emotionally, they're exhausted and
Yeah.
physically tense that their shoulders are up to their ears by the end of the day.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that tension,
absolutely.
so you're utilizing, so when we're exhaling, there's no muscles to use. It's a natural exhale. So if you're double exhaling, or if you feel like there's more breath in there, just notice that because and practice. And laying down is much easier to use your diaphragm than
Oh,
sitting or standing up. Standing up for some people is sometimes we shift our breathing. I have a client that I'm working with now, and she's at her desk all day. She's works from home and literally learning to get up, but she's working from her desk all day. And she really is exhausted at the end of the day. She has no energy. She has no bandwidth for anything. Social life has been diminished, the whole gamut. And so what she's been practicing is different breathing observations and she knows when she stands she actually takes fuller breaths. So now she's elevating her desk that she's had for about 5 years at home and utilizing that as a standing desk because she's
yes.
able to breathe in a healthier way. Sitting down many times really encourages us to have a poor breathing because we are almost we're forward, we're cutting off our diaphragm.
Yes.
And so she really has noticed it's only been about 3 or 4 weeks of her shifting and she had an issue with taking an inhale. She can exhale, but she exhales like she's doing a relaxation exhale. All she does
Mm,
that's and so now she's realizing when she starts to exhale, like that's a sign that she's got to get up. She's going to either raise her desk, walk around, go outside, move around because
yeah.
her body is starting to put her breathing's put her brain into more of a stress response.
Yeah. Okay. There's an
You're
emotional layer here. So I know like the way you breathe is a signal for maybe some emotions that are occurring or that are stored. With a shallow breath like I have, that's stress typically.
It could be, and that would be an
Okay.
inquiry to look out for you. When you think about taking short, shallow breaths, when was the first time you've noticed that? Just now that we're talking about it? Or were you able to think back at a time where it started?
Oh, I don't know when it started, but I feel like this is how I've been breathing.
So many
So,
times we start when we're in childhood,
oh, okay.
okay? Not realizing it, but we try to control a situation, so we hold
Sure.
our breath or we breathe short and shallow. So
Yes.
so I've had people have different explanations. One was she was always told she was too big, too loud, too forceful, too much.
Mm.
And so to make herself smaller, she shrunk her breath.
Her breath. Wow. Okay.
And so when she realized that, she loved to swim. And so she started practicing with the visualization we did on her swimming breathing. And I was monitoring her breathing chemistry at the time, and you get to see the shift in that. So that's what she practiced. So it's really, like I said, individualized. So the woman that I was talking about a little bit ago, we talked about when she first, and she said, I know when it happened was when somebody close to me died. That's when it happened. And then
Um,
she texted me and she said, no, it just came to me in the shower. I don't know why I thought about this, but it was something that happened when I was 3 years old. when there was a disagreement in my home. And so that's where we don't realize, and we don't really need to go into analyze. I'm not a
Sure.
psychologist. I don't do that. But the thing is, just that thought alone to know that your body has done something to protect you and it worked for a little bit, it kept you safe. But
Yeah.
now we've outgrown that and we're still keeping to that
Yes.
coping skill.
Yes. That
Does
makes
that make
perfect
sense?
yes, it makes perfect sense. Okay. All right, so for somebody who is in the funk right now, let's
Yeah.
talk about how we can equip our audience with some tools and some options to engage the breath as an asset, as a tool to help them through whatever they're going through versus something that is maybe contributing
Yes.
more to the funk.
Right. And so
Yeah,
if they've learned the dysfunctional pattern, they might be utilizing any of those other techniques that are out there, but it might last for a nanosecond, like a Tylenol kind of
sure.
thing.
That's
So
okay.
I want people to realize that the first thing is to what you did, Molly. When you're not in the funk right now, you can start to identify your breathing patterns. But when you are in the funk, first of all, it's acknowledging that it's okay to be in the funk.
Yes, absolutely.
We need to acknowledge and not
Yes,
beat ourselves up, not judge it.
correct.
And the first thing is it's going to be posture. I know it sounds simple, but what is your posture? Are we
Right.
closing ourselves off from the world or are we opening ourselves up?
Yeah.
Roll your shoulders up, release them, shake your hands out, move the body. That is, we'll get into breath, but that moving the body, moving the tension helps with that. And then I want we can do it right now. Just if you feel comfortable, if you're not driving anyone listening to this, close your eyes or gaze down. And I just want you to breathe in slowly in through your nose. Allow that air to really come in and nurture you. Really feel that breath going into your lungs and allow the exhale to happen on its own. I prefer people breathe in and out through their nose if they can. We can control the breath better. But if there's a need, which I think is important, is for that exhale of a sigh, that helps too. So if you inhale and like a real exhale sigh, in a moment, that really does help. I think Andrew Huberman does a double inhale in,
I
and
love the
then
physiological sigh. I love that one. That
he
is
does
I
that. So that can
yeah.
help in a moment. That really can. But if you find yourself always needing to be in that moment of relief, then we need to start to really be more curious about what patterns we've developed. But believe it or not, I think the statistic now is up to 80% of people have some type of dysfunctional pattern of breathing.
Yeah.
And so the breath needs to be quiet, not noisy. That's the ideal.
Yeah.
In through your nose, out through your nose, your diaphragm, if you can really access that diaphragm, practicing it. I have people rub their diaphragm, like literally do exercises to rub it, to stimulate, to open it up, to relax it a little. Massages, I always say, are non negotiable for people because we don't realize how tense. And if we can get the massage therapist to really work around that diaphragm and release that. Now, there's
Yeah.
emotions related to the diaphragm. So that's why a lot of people hold that diaphragm tight.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's many of the people I work with, a counselor, because breath work does bring some things up and then they can process that with the counselor, which I always really suggest if I really feel like it's something that's way out of my scope. But believe it or not, breathing is behavioral. So when we start to change our behavior from here on, that really helps change the physiology and then that helps change the mechanics that we use for our breathing.
Yes. Okay, so if you're in the funk right now, adjust your posture.
Yeah.
Make sure your shoulders are open, that your chest is available, you're not hunched over, and breathe in through the nose and out through the nose.
And if that's uncomfortable, do that sigh.
Oh yeah, the sigh is great. Now, tell me when we breathe that intentionally for, I don't know, a minute or whatever, what does that do to the nervous system?
For most people, what it does, so when we inhale, our heart rate goes up. It activates our sympathetic nervous system, which people call it the gas pedal, whatever we want to call it. And then when we exhale, it activates parasympathetic. People call it the rest and digest part of the
Right.
nervous system. And so That's what we're doing. We're trying to activate the rest and digest part to slow down that sympathetic response. But
Yeah.
I also want people to realize it's not one or the other. There's a harmony. That's why there's a harmony in the breath, right? And that it's not that we're just in sympathetic or we're just in parasympathetic. We need to understand why we're in those and what our needs are in the moment. And there are going to be times and situations. People, when somebody said to me, "Oh, you teach about stress and stress relief, you must be the calmest person." I said, "I still have triggers. There's
Yeah.
still things that trigger. I'm human, right? We're human."
Yeah.
And so once we start understanding and having a relationship with our breath and understanding that our breath is a signal, it's a language of its own and it's telling us something needs to be addressed. When we're
Yeah.
holding our breath, what does that mean? It means maybe I'm breathing short and shallow and I need to identify what was going on at the moment. Or if I take a breath like I do, there might be something really important that's going to happen or some bad news being told. We need to understand some of the patterns every day. I think that
Yeah.
really does help. Just like working out, right? People learn the right posture, how to position yourself, how much we can breathe, how much we can rest. The other thing about the breath is important is when that carbon dioxide level is at a certain level, the normal level, it's actually calming. It calms our body. That's part of that stress response. So it's why chemistry is important part. We can breathe deeply and we can, which is always one of those things. I'm like, please don't say deep because they don't
Yeah.
understand the concept of deep depth. I want
Sure.
them to you can take a full breath in, just don't, and make sure you're taking it through your nose, not through your mouth. Some people can't, have obstruction. So they have to learn to breathe with what they call pursed lips or like you're
Mhm.
sipping out of a straw a little bit tighter that way. But yeah, so it really is important to make sure that our body does get the proper breathing chemistry, but also the muscle relaxing is really important
Mm.
because that sends signals, all those send signals to the brain to keep us in that stress mode.
Yes. Okay.
And so we're doing that. So we have to just be aware, what are we doing? How can we shift quickly?
Yes. Oh my gosh. This is such a powerful conversation. And honestly, it's something that I'm going to be coming back to over and over again because there's something just really cool about diving into something that you don't normally think about that can truly be transformative in your life. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much to me if you would take a minute to rate, review, and subscribe and share it with somebody who may need it. It does help me in my mission to reach 1 million people and help them pivot out of the funk. And this one is going to help people pivot out of the funk. Can I get an amen? All right, you guys, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next time.